I'm just going to go ahead and explain to you, the American people, how our Electoral College works. Okay? This is in my own language. You get the information from Article 2, Section 1, and the 12th Amendment. So the Electoral College, the rules for the Electoral College comes from our Constitution, Article 2, Section 1, and the 12th Amendment. So the number of every single American state's electors to the Electoral College is equal to that state's number of senators and their number of representatives. The process of choosing a state's electors of each state is legislated by each respective state, by the legislature. Typically, the state's Republican and Democrat Party appoint all of their party's electors. Since the Electoral College is supposed to be made up of regular citizens, no senators, no representatives, nor any person holding an office of trust or profit under the United States can be appointed an elector. The U.S. Congress picks the day that the electors are chosen and the day that they all vote. On the day that the electors vote, in December, after the November general election, they all meet in their respective states in one central location, and they vote by ballot for president and vice president as two distinctly different votes. At least one of the two candidates, the vice president or the president, can't be from the same state from where the elector is from. So a president/vice president ticket can avoid flunking this Electoral College test by making sure that both of them aren't from the same state. For example, if both candidates are, say, from Texas, then the electors of Texas can only vote for the president or the vice president, but not for both of them. After the two ballots have been voted upon, then a list is made up of who voted for whom. And then that list is signed and certified and sealed by the Secretary of State of the respective state and then sent to Washington, D.C. to the President of the Senate, who is currently Mitch McConnell. Then Mitch McConnell, the President of the Senate, opens all the list and counts all the votes from all the states in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives. Whomever garners a majority of the votes, whoever garners a majority of the electoral votes, wins the presidency of the United States of America. If nobody gains a majority of the electoral votes in the Electoral College, then immediately the House of Representatives votes upon the top three candidates. And the way the House of Representatives, their runoff election, how it works, every single state gets one vote. And that's it. Doesn't matter if you got one rep or 20 representatives, every state in the House only gets one vote, and a quorum, a group that is big enough to say that the meeting is legitimate, is derived when at least 2/3 of the states are present. For a state to be present, only one member from the respective state's representatives needs to be present. And the winner of the presidency must garner a majority of the votes of the House. If the House cannot pick a majority candidate before March 4th of the next year, then the vice president becomes the president. The vice president wins the Electoral College election when they win a majority, 50% plus one of the electoral votes on the vice president list. Their runoff election, it's kind of similar, but instead of going to the House, if no majority victor emerges from the vice presidential race, then the Senate votes on the top two candidates. At least 2/3 of all the senators must be present for quorum. And then a majority of that quorum, a majority of the whole number of senators is needed for a vice president candidate to claim victory. So again, with the president, if no majority of the electors of the Electoral College votes for the president, it goes to the House. And the House is made up of 400 folks. There's a bunch of representatives for each state, but only each state gets one vote. And then it's only a majority out of the states which are present. It's different for the vice president, which is actually kind of crazy because it's like a bigger hurdle for a lesser position. But for the vice president, the Senate votes on the top 2 candidates, whereas the House voted on the top 3. At least 2/3 of all the senators must be present for a quorum of all the senators, 2/3 of all the senators versus 2/3 of just the states, even if it's just 1 or 2 of the reps, but you only get 1 vote. So if 2 reps show up, then the 2 reps have to agree. So 2/3 of all the senators must be present for a quorum, and then a simple majority of the whole number of senators, and I believe there's 100 senators, so that would be 51 senators would be needed for a vice presidential candidate to claim victory. So those are very different runoff elections, but those runoff elections are very important. So people that want to criticize the faithless electors or those people who say just keep on fighting to the end, I don't like Al Gore's tactics. I don't like Hillary's tactics, how they just give up, how they can see the election the day of that it happens. Wait to the Electoral College. The point of the Electoral College is to flip the vote, to undo the popular will of the people. That's the point. That's what Alexander Hamilton, that's what anybody, just look at the damn thing. Why do we need to vote for a group of electors to vote on our behalf? We can't vote for ourselves. And then, if you believe in the Electoral College so much, how come you haven't advocated for an Electoral College in your state? There's no rural versus city dynamic in states. Get the hell out of here. If you love the Electoral College so much, why don't you get an Electoral College for the Electoral College? So Kentucky has 8 electors, but how can we trust 8 electors? I think those 8 electors should vote and elect some other electors, and then those electors are the ones that actually get to vote for president. This is so dumb. This is so stupid. Our vote doesn't need to be refined. 1 person, 1 vote. This encourages lots of people to get out to go vote because 40 of our states are safe states. 40 of the states. So there's only a handful of 10 battleground states, usually less. Usually it's like 1 or 2, right? Ohio and Florida. 2016 it was Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So those are the only 3 states that matter. Those are the 3 states that tip the scales. Most of the states out of the 40 states are safe states, safely Republican or safely Democrat. So if you live in Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, and you're a Democrat and you voted for Hillary, why did you do that? You wasted your damn vote. That vote went nowhere. It didn't get counted towards the Electoral College, so it was a wasted vote. With the national vote, then all the Democrats of Alabama, Mississippi, and Kentucky, their votes would count versus all the safely Democrat states, Massachusetts, Maine, New York, California. The Republicans' votes would matter in California, New York, Maine, and Massachusetts. So your solidly, safely Democrat and safely Republican states eliminates 40 states in the Union from their election, their votes from even being relevant. And so if we have a national election, the Democrats from Alabama and the Republicans from California, their votes would matter. Their votes would go to the national election, would go to the final total, and then whoever has more American people voting for them wins. That's just so obvious. I can't even believe I have to explain myself to do. I want a nice, simple, plain old national election. We're all Americans, right? So when we vote for the president, is there anything more American than voting for the president? So as much as people want to use that federalist argument, all the states are their own individuals. We're voting for the leader of the United States of America. It's okay for states to have their own elections for their own public officials, but for the United States of America, and Nebraska and Maine, they've been splitting the votes anyways, proportionally. So 2 states, Maine is the only state in the nation that has instant runoff voting, the only state in the nation that actually has a fair election. The very last law that the 12th Amendment dictates is that anybody disqualified to be president is also disqualified to be vice president. So if, for whatever reason, if you're impeached, you couldn't become vice president. If you're disqualified, if you're under 35, what are the things that disqualify? But anyways, if you're disqualified to be president, you also can't be vice president. So that's the rules of the Electoral College. So I think that in this election, 2020, if the Electoral College is still up and running, then the election should go all the way to the Electoral College. That's when the vote actually counts. The electors are the only people in America whose votes count. So Donald won not because he won America, he won because he won 200 electors' votes, and it was more than Hillary's. But Hillary conceded before the Electoral College convened. Here in Colorado, you had a faithless elector who wasn't going to vote for Hillary Clinton. He didn't have to. Typically, they're picked from the party. They're the loyalist of the party. But once you get picked as an elector, then you have the right to overturn the election. That's the point. That's the point, to make sure, in case the stupid masses, in case the stupid people pick a stupid candidate, then the elites, this Electoral College, this little temporary makeshift Congress, can undo the popular will and go ahead and establish who they want to become president. And typically they don't even do that. Typically they just, rubber stamp. The state voted for him, and then that faithless elector in Colorado, they tried to first made him promise that he wasn't going to vote the opposite way, and then when he goes to vote, he votes the way he wanted to, and then they acted like they were going to throw him in jail and all this other shit. There is a Supreme Court case which actually says that it's okay for the states to pass laws that make people, that force their electors to vote for the state. So there's 26 states that say you just got to be a rubber stamp. You just got to rubber stamp the shit out. That's all you got to do. And I think that where they come up with that is that the legislature gets to write the rules for how the electors are chosen. But that has nothing to do with how the electors vote. And the Constitution is very clear about this, that the electors can overturn the popular will of the state. So they can vote for whoever they damn well please. So if it's just customary, if we're just rubber stamping, 26 of the 50 states already passed laws that say be a rubber stamping idiot, right? We don't want you. The point of the Electoral College is they were supposed to get together, they were supposed to look at the candidates, they were supposed to deliberate, and then they were supposed to come up to a nice, better, more well-reasoned, right? An intelligent decision. You don't want the dumb masses, the rabble picking the shit. You want just 8 qualified electors picking who's going to win. But that doesn't happen. There is no conversations. There are no discussions. For 26 of the state actually is breaking the Constitution, I believe, because it's very clear. The U.S. Constitution is very, very clear that the electors have the power to vote for whomever they goddamn well please. So if there was a vote, say a state had dictated that you must vote for the person, and you went ahead and did what the Constitution allows you to do, there would be a lawsuit, but you would win that lawsuit. So that Supreme Court case, I just read the headline, but essentially they got it wrong. They got it wrong. They're going to say that the state can mandate you to vote for. No, the Constitution says you can vote for whomever you please. And again, for both of those things, we're not doing the deliberation. It's not being used for the way that it's supposed to be used. If we're just going to rubber stamp the decision of the popular, whoever won the state, Donald Trump won Kentucky, so all 8 electors voted for Donald Trump. What was the point? Why did you do that? Why did you split that up like that? I mean, there's no purpose for the Electoral College. If anything, you could cut out the Electoral College if you want to keep the numbers for all the states, then just mandate it nationally. If you win the state, then you win all but then that would go against Maine and Nebraska. So my point is, if you're just going to rubber stamp the goddamn decision, what the fuck do you have the Electoral College for? What's the goddamn point? What is the point of the Electoral College if they're just going to rubber stamp? They're not doing any of what the framers had intended for them to do, to discuss and deliberate and to overturn popular elections. I've never heard of that actually even happening. I've heard of a faithless elector. That's what they call them, a faithless elector. You didn't go along with your state. You went ahead and voted for somebody else. And there were several faithless electors, 10 or so faithless electors from the 2016 election. But they didn't overturn the thing. So, they got to make a couple of headlines and they got to shake things up, which, I'm all about. But overall, the Electoral College is archaic and bullshit and anti-democracy, and fuck the Electoral College. So I think we can beat the Electoral College with our election system. So that's why now you know how the Electoral College works. Okie dokie. John Masters, Magote. Peace.